So give me a sec to grab that link. All right, and okay. We're almost going here. And all right, I'm going to get a short link here for us, and then we can share this out. Yeah. Keynote Theater 3. Oh, it didn't work. Fair. How about just, no way. There's no way. Yeah, that worked. I love it. What are we listening to?
The Honking of Oakland.
Oh, okay. All right, guys.
This Yeti microphone picks up everything.
Yeah, no, it does, man. All right, let me remove that. All right. You're building up anticipation. Here's the link if you want to throw out that to your friends. You could probably throw in a flip class hashtag there somewhere. And close TweetDeck because it makes noise. There we go. What I need is a dedicated social media person sitting right there. This part. Closing, and don't close all the windows, or that would be bad. All right, my friends, we're going to go. You ready?
Yep.
Smile. You're watching the EdReach Network. And welcome to Keynote Theater. This is part of the EdReach Network, giving educators a voice, a big voice. You've reached episode number 3. Let's use video to reinvent education. We're going to be watching the Salman Khan TED video, and we have some very special guests. Please welcome Flip Class Gurus, Jonathan Bergman. How you doing, Jonathan?
I'm doing great. Nice to see you all.
Good to see you, Jonathan. Where are you calling from?
Calling from Lake Forest, Illinois.
Lake Forest, and of course you have your kind of co-founder of the Flip Classroom movement, Mr. Aaron Sams. How you doing, Aaron?
Heidi ho, how's it going?
Heidi ho, and where do we have you calling from?
I am in from Woodland Park, Colorado.
Woodland Park, Colorado. I have a little story about that in a moment. And of course we have Mr. YouTube EU, James Sanders.
Hello, hello.
James from the Bay Area, KIPP School.
Yep.
Feeling good?
Feeling great. Excited to be here with these esteemed guests. It should be fun.
This is something I've been looking forward to for a very long time, to get everyone on here talking about Flip Classroom and to kind of hear what we could take away from Salman Khan's TED Talk from last year. Aaron, Woodland Park, I have to tell you my little Flip Classroom story, and then maybe you guys can tell yours as well. But when I was a technology teacher like 4 or 5 years ago, I had got this idea that it would be great to just start doing screencasts and start putting them in front of my students or whatnot. And I thought it was really cool because when I was going away for maybe a day, and I could give my sub a sub plan and just have the kids watch the videos, which I thought was kind of neat. But somebody shared a video with me that was a news story about what you guys were doing in Woodland Park, Colorado. And I don't know. You probably know what I'm talking about. It was on Google Video. It wasn't even on.
Yep.
And the local reporters there in Woodland Park, Colorado, talking about and what was the term you guys used?
Oh gosh, it's been through lots of permutations of terms. Vodcasting, educational vodcasting. We had no idea what to call what we were doing. We were just throwing names around.
An interesting story on that video is that the news station showed up, and our assistant principal said, "Were you guys expecting the TV station?" We said, "What TV station?" And they showed up, and they said, "Well, send them on back." So somehow they'd gotten word of something that was happening in Woodland Park, and they never even called. They just showed up, and we had a great chat, and then that video kind of went semi-viral. So.
Well, the irony beyond semi there.
Yeah, and the irony about that is, I mean, that video came out 5 years before the video we're about to watch, and I had been following your work for that amount of time. James, when did you get the urge to start flipping?
Definitely a little bit later, and because of the technological constraints at the school, being that only 80% of my students have access to the internet at home, I don't really consider myself a flip teaching teacher. But I definitely leverage video in my classroom, and students are being able to access it whenever and asynchronously in my classroom. And so we're stuck here in this situation where, is it blended learning? Is it flip teaching? What is it? And I get to the point where it's eliminate the buzzwords altogether and just talk about what works and what doesn't, and how so.
Yeah, I think we're sensing the same thing. It's like, what is it? What is flip thing? What is blended learning? How do they overlap? Do they overlap? Are they the same thing? Frankly, we don't care. We want kids to learn.
Exactly.
Call it what you want. I don't care. I want to be able to meet the kids' needs, and that's it. So.
Yeah,
exactly. And this just happens to be, we have this wonderful tool called the internet where we can put our learning online and make kids engaged outside of four walls, and it's just continuing to grow and grow and grow, and it's really exciting. Now I know you guys have other things to talk about, but why don't we dive into the keynote, and then I certainly want to hear more about what you guys have going on with Flip Teaching and the Flip Classroom at the tail end of the show. Is that okay?
Sure, sounds great.
All right. Just a couple rules about Keynote Theater. I got this inspiration from something Roger Ebert does at his film festival, where he basically shows a classic film. People, and he basically says, if you want to say something or a comment about the film, just yell "stop," and then we'll stop the film, and you guys can chat about it. And I guess they're doing that with Citizen Kane at his most recent film festival. But I like this idea for keynotes. Let's talk about it. Let's stop and let's discuss the moments, the key moments that come up during the talk. And what better guys to have it with Salman Khan than with you guys. So the rule is basically, so say stop when you want to say stop. We'll try to we'll try to find some gaps there so that we're not saying stop every couple minutes. But we would like the show to be around certain, let's try to keep it within an hour if we can, if that's even possible. This one's a little bit longer. My goal was to have it be more around 50 minutes, and this is only the third show, so we have to see how that goes. So, you know, dive in. We'll talk, and then we'll move on. All right.
Sounds good.
All right. So let us roll the tape of Mr. Salman Khan, and let's use video to reinvent education. All right. Producer, and here we go.
Khan Academy is most known for its collection of videos, so before I go any farther, let me show you a little bit of a montage.
The hypotenuse is now going to be 5. This animal's fossils are only found in this area of South America, a nice clean band here, and this part of Africa. We could integrate over the surface, and the notation usually is a capital sigma, National Assembly. They create the Committee of Public Safety, which sounds like a very nice committee. Notice this is an aldehyde, and it's an alcohol. Start differentiating into effector and memory cells. A galaxy. Hey, there's another galaxy. Oh, look, there's another galaxy. And for dollars is their 30 million plus the $20 million from the American manufacturer. If this does not blow your mind, then you have no emotion.
We now have on the order of 2,200 videos covering everything from basic arithmetic all the way to vector calculus and some of the stuff that you saw up there. We have a million students a month using the site, watching on the order of 100 to 200,000 videos a day. But what we're going to talk about in this is how we're going to the next level. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about really just how I got started. And some of y'all might know, about 5 years ago, I was an analyst at a hedge fund. And I was in Boston, and I was tutoring my cousins in New Orleans remotely. And I started putting the first YouTube videos up really just as kind of a nice to have, just kind of a supplement for my cousins, something that might, you know, give them a refresher or something. And as soon as I put those first YouTube videos up, something interesting happened. Actually, a bunch of interesting things happened. The first was the feedback from my cousins. They told me that they preferred me on YouTube than in person. And once you get over the backhanded nature of that, there was actually something very profound there. They were saying that they preferred the automated version of their cousin to their cousin. At first, it's very unintuitive, but when you actually think about it from their point of view, it makes a ton of sense. You have this situation where now they can pause and repeat their cousin. Now they can, without feeling like they're wasting my time. They could, if they have to review something that they should have learned a couple of weeks ago or maybe a couple of years ago, they don't have to be embarrassed and ask their cousin. They can just watch those videos. If they're bored, they can go ahead. They can watch it at their own time, at their own pace. And probably the least appreciated, I guess, aspect of this is the notion that the very first time that you're trying to get your brain around a new concept, the very last thing you need is another human being saying, do you understand this? And that's what was happening with the interaction with my cousins before, and now they could just do it kind of in the intimacy of their own room. The other thing that happened is, I put them on YouTube just for the.
All right, James says stop.
I saw no reason to make it private, so I let other.
I mean, that's my first question. I guess is not really an answer; it's more of a question. Is he brought up the point of saying that his cousins preferred the YouTube version of him. But my question would be, is it because it's their uncle who's been tutoring them for a while now recording his lectures for a specific set of students being his own? I know I have found that my videos are very effective on the Empire of Ghana when I've created them for my students. I know exactly what they need, and I'm able to meet those needs in video as I would in class. And so I'm trying to figure this out, though, because I think the videos, my Empire of Ghana videos, are also helping other people sometimes. But I had an audience in mind. I don't know.
So
Yeah,
Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, just something along those lines. First off, I mean, the fact that he has so many videos online, I think, one, it's a great service to the world, frankly, that all this information is available out there. So first off, I do want to credit him for that. But I've had the same experience, James, that my videos are made for my students. Now, and I've done that because I know what my kids need. I know what they want. I know how they learn, and they know me. I have a relationship with my students that they don't have with somebody else on, that they're watching on the internet. Now, that's not to say someone can't learn from my videos, or that I couldn't learn from, Sal Khan's videos, because I could, and other people can learn from mine and have, and it's a valuable resource to have out there. But I think you're right. What you're saying is your videos are made for your students to meet their individual learning needs, and if other people benefit, great. And I think I think you're noticing that his cousins had the same experience. Someone was making a video for them, and that resonated with them. So
the context, right?
Yeah, definitely context.
I'm thinking of a story. Aaron and I have trained a lot of people all over the world now, I guess, in how to make these videos and how to flip their classroom. And we're hearing this over and over again, that the kids like their teachers to make their videos. We had one teacher who came to us, and he said, when I first started making these videos, I was making them thinking of the whole world. He was trying to beat the Sal Khan. He was a math teacher. And then he says, they weren't that effective. But when I changed the gears the next year and I made them just for my kids, they were a lot better. So,
yeah.
Interesting comment.
Well, I can imagine being a kid, there's this, there's a relationship there. There's that context. When you see your teacher, it's about that think aloud, right? And you hear your teacher say it in class, and you might hear them say it again on a video, and that's where that clicks. I mean, in a rare case, you might find somebody who is really good at what they do, and it clicks for them online.
Well, and also we know when our students need a little rush of endorsements. So say, for example, I'm talking about medieval West African trade. The example I used to teach it was myself. And so I said, okay, picture the coolest kid in school. Then I showed this elementary school picture of myself. And they get excited and they get going, and I've hooked them into the video, and I'm using a hook at the beginning of the video to be able to explain the concept, and then I bring in a bunch of these Taki chips, which my students love, and I'm trading them in the video and explaining how it works, and it's meeting their cultural needs, meeting their stimulation needs, being able to go in there and get excited about the concept. And I don't know how many of my students would go on and watch Dan Rizak's 10-minute math podcast video and not be, because it's a different teacher teaching a different set of students. I don't know.
So perhaps, and while we go ahead and continue this, the teacher's story is perhaps important for the student in the classroom.
Yeah.
Let's see how that plays out. Let's continue.
Watch it, and then people started stumbling on it, and I started getting some comments and some letters and all sorts of kind of feedback from random people around the world. And these are just a few. This is actually from one of the original calculus videos, and someone wrote just on YouTube. It was a YouTube comment. First time I smiled doing a derivative. And let's pause here. This person did a derivative, and then they smiled. And then in response to that same comment, this is on the thread, you could go on YouTube and look at these comments, someone else wrote, same thing here. I actually got a natural high and a good mood for the entire day. Since I remember seeing all of this matrix text in class, and here I'm all like, I know Kung Fu. Let's see. And we got a lot of feedback along those lines. Clearly it was helping people. But then as the viewership kept growing and kept growing, I started getting letters from people, and it was starting to become clear that it was actually more than just a nice to have. This is just an excerpt from one of those letters. My 12-year-old son has autism and has had a terrible time with math. We have tried everything, viewed everything, bought everything. We stumbled on your video on decimals, and it got through. Then we went on to the dreaded fractions. Again, he got it. We could not believe it. He is so excited. And so you can imagine, here I was, an analyst at a hedge fund. It was very strange for me to do something of social value. I was excited, so I kept going. And then other things started to dawn on me. That not only would it help my cousins right now, or these people who were sending letters, but it could maybe that this content will never go old, that it could help their kids or their grandkids. If Isaac Newton had done YouTube videos on calculus, I wouldn't have to.
Okay, can you pause it right there real quick?
Good. We don't know.
You bet.
All right, so I'm totally going to have to disagree with him right here that if Isaac Newton had made videos on calculus that he wouldn't have to. My videos are all under permutation at least number 2, many 2.5, and will probably undergo many more. So our first ones were not that great, to be perfectly honest. It was a screencast, it was a pen, it was no webcam. We asked our kids, how do you want these to be better? We got some feedback, and it was make them shorter, 1 topic per video, and it was put your face on there so I can see you, that you're not just a disembodied voice, you are my teacher. And so we made the second version based on feedback from our students, and to make one and leave it, I think is, again, it's archiving something out there, which is fine, but again, these are for my students, and I have to revise them. I have to make them relevant for my kids. I have to change them. John has an earth science video with the earthquake in Haiti a couple years ago. It was very relevant the year he made the video, but the year after, and then the year after that, kids are like, wait, there was an earthquake in Haiti? It's just not. It's not a relevant video anymore, and it needs to be remade. And we have to undergo these permutations to continue to meet the needs of our kids.
Well, you make a good point, and this is something that when I teach flip teaching to other teachers, they're like, "Oh, I don't have to use a webcam. Great." And I don't know. What do you think about that? Is a webcam important?
My kids have told me. So. Sorry, go ahead, John.
I want to say I believe the webcam helps. You're not that disembodied voice. I think, Aaron, you just said that. The other thing that we also do, and of course this is after production stuff, depends on how good the teacher is, but we would bring our video camera to different places. So I visited Peru with my son a couple of summers ago, and then I talked about the geology of the Andes Mountains while standing in the Andes Mountains, and we clipped that into the video. Aaron and I were in Washington, D.C. at a conference, and we went to the Smithsonian, and we talked about the chemistry of diamonds while standing in front of the Hope Diamond. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, that we could insert those kinds of sort of real-world things. Our kids may not get a chance to go to Peru or to the Smithsonian, but I can bring it to them. You're kind of doing the Bill Nye thing, but it's your teacher that they see every day.
Yeah, that kind of brings up a misconception, I think, about flip teaching, flip classroom stuff, is that it's just a lecture on a video, and it doesn't have to, and it can be. It doesn't have to be. I mean, John and I, we do little demos. Like you said, we carry the video camera around. We do some direct instruction on the screencast, but it's not just that. We try to make it as interesting and interactive as we can, that we can. I guess we do the best we can with the equipment that we have, and just being amateurs who are also full-time teachers who this isn't our job to produce video.
Right. Well, you gotta do what you can, right?
Yeah.
James?
Yeah, I'm having a tough time with this, because I think the Khan Academy also recognizes that, and that's why they've brought on different groups and people since this. So I know Vihart, one of my favorite YouTubers, joined the Khan Academy, and she makes these great math videos where she's visualizing it, drawing it out. It's the really engaging stuff. And they brought on a group called Smart History, and they're going to these museums and doing the same types of videos that you guys are describing. And I have to think about people like us. We do have not necessarily the time, but we do create the video, and I think that's definitely better than us using somebody else's video, because it is our voice. But at the same time, how many teachers in the world are going to create a video the night before or the week before to use in the classroom? So I think in our case we can be, and so keep in mind that I'm being critical of the Khan Academy, but that's just comparing it to Sal teaching my class versus me teaching my class. Whereas I feel like 99% of the teachers might be able to leverage videos here and there from the Khan Academy when needed, because there's just no time to be able to do that. So I mean, I definitely respect what he's doing and admire, and we'll get into the adaptive software that comes with it later. But just wanted to just throw that out there, because the rest of it I might come off really critical.
and I do know that they are remaking some videos, and I know he has remade some videos, and to his credit, I think that's wise, and he's obviously listening to feedback on that. And the last thing I want to do is pin the guy down and pigeonhole him based on something he said in an 18-minute talk a year ago. So
it has aged a bit. So
yeah.
All right, let's continue. Let's see where he goes.
The other thing that happened, even at this point, I said, okay, maybe it's a good supplement. It's good for motivated students. It's good for maybe homeschoolers. But I didn't think it would be something that would somehow penetrate the classroom. But then I started getting letters from teachers. And the teachers would write saying, we've used your videos to flip the classroom. You've given the lectures. So now what we do, and this could actually happen in every classroom in America tomorrow, what I do is I assign the lectures for homework, and what used to be homework, I now have the students doing in the classroom. And I want to pause here for I want to pause here for a second, because there's a couple of interesting things. One, when those teachers are doing that, there's the obvious benefit. There's the benefit that now their students can enjoy the videos in the way that my cousins did. They can pause, repeat at their own pace, at their own time. But the more interesting thing, and this is the unintuitive thing when you talk about technology in the classroom, by removing the one-size-fits-all lecture from the classroom and letting students have a self-paced lecture at home, and then when you go to the classroom, letting them do work, having the teacher walk around, having the peers actually be able to interact with each other. These teachers have used technology to humanize the classroom. They took a fundamentally dehumanizing experience, a bunch of 30 kids with their fingers on their lips, not allowed to interact with each other. A teacher, no matter how good, has to give this kind of one-size-fits-all lecture to 30 students, blank faces, slightly antagonistic, and now it's a human experience. Now they're actually interacting with each other.
All right, can we pause right there?
Once the Khan Academy kind of, I quit my job and we turned into a real organization. We're not for profit.
There you go.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, sorry, John. Go ahead.
If you want to, let's just chat about the origin of the term, the flipped classroom, maybe, and even where the flipped classroom came from.
Right.
When Aaron and I came up with the idea, I'll be careful how I say this. We came up with the idea in Woodland Park in 2007 of flipping our class. We didn't call it flipping our class. We thought we had an original idea, and we went all out this, and actually for many years, we actually went on a Google search and we said, is anybody else doing this? And we couldn't find anyone.
I did the same thing. I went back in time to try to look for the origin of that.
And so we couldn't find the origin, and so at one point we thought that we were the originators of the idea. Well, it turns out that a guy in the year 2000, Aaron, what's his name again?
It was a team of 3 professors at the Miami University in Ohio. They published an article about inverting the classroom. So they kind of coined the term the inverted classroom there. And I'll find a link to that. We can get that in the program notes later on. But actually, if you go to flipteaching.com, that's Ramsey Musalam's site. He has a link to it there in his reference page. But yeah, that was kind of an early reference to it. It wasn't really using screencasts necessarily. It was mostly posting PowerPoint and things like that. So yeah, like John said, we thought we had an original idea. There really aren't that many original ideas out there. But the term, the first we heard of it, using the term flip, was in an article by Dan Pink. It was in November of 2010, where he was talking about what Carl Fish was doing, who's a colleague of ours here in Colorado, and he called it the Fish flip.
Right.
Now, to my knowledge, that's kind of the first reference to talking about flipping the classroom. Again, there could be something that predates that.
And you've been doing it for 3 years at that point.
Yeah. We were 3 years at that point is where we had been. We talked to Carl, and basically he kind of, I don't know if he got the idea from us or if it came through conversations with us, but
actually,
basically in the comments of the article, he said, "Hey, you talk to these guys in Woodland Park who've been doing this for a while."
Actually, what he did, Aaron, is you remember he had a chemistry teacher, Brian Haytack.
Oh, Brian Haytack, yeah.
Brian Haytack was a teacher at his school, and he got the idea from Brian, and Brian had attended one of our workshops, and so that's where Carl got the idea. And of course, Carl being, the famous blogger, the famous, did you know guy, he has a lot of attention, and so when he blogged about it, Carl Fish took notice, or Daniel Pink took notice of Carl Fish, etc. And so I think Daniel Pink is actually the one who coined the term, as far as I understand.
Yeah. So the weird thing, the crazy thing, the first time I watched this this TED video from Sal Khan, was in either late February or March of 2011. So a little over a year ago. The crazy thing, John and I had just submitted the manuscript of our book that's coming out about 2 weeks before, and the title was "Flip Your Classroom," and we're like, what the heck? He's talking about the title of our book. It was just really surreal to hear him talk about that. I'm like, gosh, we just turned the book in with that name. It was really bizarre. So I don't know what that means. It was crazy.
Yeah, no, I remember the Fish Flip article from Carl, or from Dan Pink, and to hear him say it here is almost like some sort of Steve Jobs type of thing, where suddenly he's inventing something that has already been around. But I don't want to say it's not fair or whatever. I don't know that we want to go there. But there is this feeling, at least that I have, that he doesn't give credit to the teachers that have been doing this for so long, and this TED video looks like he invented this idea.
That's an interesting thing about once you do a TED Talk, you kind of own the thing that you did the TED Talk about, and you're just kind of associated with it. I mean, it's kind of one of the magical things about TED. I love TED, and I love what they're doing, and I love the talks, but it's just really kind of culturally interesting how once it's on a TED Talk, that's it. That's yours. So, I mean, I'll be perfectly honest. I'll put my cards on the table. I was a little cranky for about a month and a half. After I saw that, I'm like, I just got scooped in a TED Talk. And now, granted, I had many sleepless nights for a while, and I'm over it. I don't really care. But I'll put it out there. I was a little upset. I'll be honest.
It's fair.
I was too. We watched this video together in Aaron's room. Aaron saying, "You got to see this. You got to see this." And I thought, did he just steal our term, or just steal our idea? I mean, again, at this point, I think we still thought it was our idea. We didn't know about the 2000 article from the college professor in Miami.
Right.
But it felt like we were scooped. But
yeah. So that being said, I want to make sure that people are holding me to the same level of scrutiny as well, though. So, like, I appreciate it when people say, hey, have you seen this? This predated you. And I go, awesome, great. And I totally want to give credit where credit's due. So please, anyone watching this, hold me accountable to that. Because I want to be, and I don't want to be criticized as the guy who's trying to own something that isn't his.
Which is why I'm really excited that there isn't a buzzword for the idea that, because I run my entire class online, but I'm with my students, and it's just because we have Chromebooks, but I've created websites and blogs and leveraging the power of video and a bunch of different web tools to create this basically cloud classroom type experience. But I've purposely not used cloud classroom because I really don't want that to be a buzzword. And it's funny how many times, like, when visitors will come in, like, oh, James runs a blended learning model, or James runs kind of a flipped teaching model, to try to convince or to explain it to somebody else. And I'm really excited that there isn't a term, and I'm not out there to try to, like, take it, because once you put it out there, just like you saw what happened to you guys, it's just like this original idea is going to get co-opted and say, oh yeah, and then the credit rarely comes back to where it's due. And I mean, and maybe we're just being bitter, but I definitely can understand it's got to be really frustrating.
One of our concerns is
Go ahead, John.
Actually, one of our concerns is that Aaron and I have now become known as the flipped classroom guys. And it is a buzzword, and what the flipped classroom means to people is different, and we're afraid that it's too buzzy, and we even have fought the notion that we want to be known as that. I mean, yeah. Aaron, you could probably add more to that. It doesn't feel quite right to us, even that.
Yeah, it's difficult, but it is what it is. We attached ourselves to it, and we're running with it. So there we go.
There you go.
Yep.
All right, guys. Let's move on.
The question is, how do we take this to the next level? How do we take what those teachers were doing to their natural conclusion? And so what I'm showing over here, these are actual exercises that I started writing for my cousins. The ones I started were much more primitive. This is a kind of a more competent version of it. But the paradigm here is we'll generate as many questions as you need until you get that concept, until you get 10 in a row. And the Khan Academy videos are there. You get hints, the actual steps for that problem if you don't know how to do it. But the paradigm here, it seems like a very simple thing, 10 in a row, you move on. But it's fundamentally different than what's happening in classrooms right now. In a traditional classroom, you have a couple of homework, lecture, and then you have a snapshot exam. And that exam, whether you get a 70%, an 80%, a 90%, or a 95%, the class moves on to the next topic. And even that 95% student, what was the 5% they didn't know? Maybe they didn't know what happens when you raise something to the 0th power. And then you go build on that in the next concept. That's analogous to imagine learning to ride a bicycle. And I give you a bicycle, maybe I give you a lecture ahead of time, and I give you that bicycle for 2 weeks, and then I come back after 2 weeks, and I say, well, let's see, you're having trouble taking left turns, you can't quite stop. You're an 80% bicyclist. So I put a big
I'm going to talk over him for
stamp
just
on
a
your
sec,
forehead.
but when I first saw this,
And then I say,
it
"Here's
just
the
looked like drill and
But
kill to me.
as ridiculous as that sounds, that's exactly what's happening in our classrooms right now. And the idea is, you fast forward and good students start failing algebra all of a sudden and start failing calculus all of a sudden, despite it being smart, despite having good teachers, and it's usually because they had these Swiss cheese gaps that kept building throughout their foundation. So our model is learn math the way you would learn anything, like the way you would learn a bicycle. Stay on that bicycle. Fall off that bicycle. Do it as long as necessary until you have mastery. The traditional model, it penalizes you for
I want to talk for a little bit.
but it does not expect mastery.
Go for it, James.
This is, I mean, this adaptive, really fancy worksheet generator. It's actually really good for what it is. It's like a really good worksheet generator, and it'll customize the worksheets based on where the students are at. And one of the things that I'm excited about with the future is I don't think that we're going to be able to get rid of this idea of students need to learn new skills and students need to learn new content. But I don't think that's the most important part of what we do as teachers. We need to give students experiences where they are collaborating, thinking critically, and creating. And if we could figure out a way, and it may be the Khan Academy, may be something else, figuring out how to be more efficient and how students master new skills and learn new content so that we can free up more time to do the projects and activities that we want to do. So I do that by creating videos myself. I do that by assigning readings, and I do that by trying to move that to the smallest piece of my classroom as possible. So is it flipping, is it blended, whatever, but that's the goal. And so if the Khan Academy and this fancy worksheet generator adaptive program enables a teacher to do something like that where they actually are leveraging that to their advantage, then great. And if they're not, and I'm walking into a classroom and I'm seeing them doing modules, either that or on 60 Minutes, terrible.
Yeah, along those lines, James, you work close to Ramsey Musallam, and we've mentioned him before. One thing that he always says in his presentations is that the videos suit themselves very well to the very lowest level of Bloom's taxonomy. Yep. So the bottom two tiers, you put those in a video, and like you said, James, you make that the most insignificant part of your class. Now, because you kind of have to have that stuff. You got to learn how to run a linear regression at some point when you're doing math. You got to learn who the president was during the Civil War. Those are little factoids that you need to have, and you can put that in a video. You can find that real quick on the internet. Whatever medium you're using, make that the insignificant portion of your class. So, like you said, the kids can get into some critical thinking. So I'm looking at this adaptive model that he has, and it's kind of start at the bottom of Bloom's and work your way up, and that is one valid way to get to some higher order thinking. But another way is kind of the project-based learning approach, and that's to start at the top of Bloom's and tap down to the lower stuff when you need it. And so you put video when they need it. You as a teacher direct your student to a video when they need it. You have it on demand so they can get it when they need it. So that's a totally different approach as well. So one other thing I wanted to mention about what he's talking about in terms of mastering things and filling these gaps. I actually had a friend of mine, because John and I, version 2 of our flipped classroom thing that we started in the 2008-2009 school year was what we called the flipped mastery approach. And we wanted to get it so kids didn't have gaps in their understanding, like he was talking about. We wanted to make it so that kids could move through the material at a pace that was appropriate to them, and we wanted them to demonstrate mastery before they move on, similar to what he's talking about. And we tried that for a year. And then we tweaked it, and we tried it again another year. And I was getting really frustrated. Now, John and I probably have a little bit different opinions about this, but I saw kids, to be perfectly honest, completely demoralized when they couldn't move ahead. And it drove me nuts as a teacher. And I just wanted to help them, and my heart went out to them like, but you got to get it before you can move on. And so that's when I discovered UDL, Universal Design for Learning. Now, so the mastery approach was good for me to get to the point where I could say, you know what, this kid isn't getting it, and they're not getting it from my video, and they're not being able to demonstrate their understanding from my tests that I have online. So how am I going to get them to learn it? Do they need to read it? Do they need to watch it? Do they need to research it? Do they need to get this in a project? Do they need me to sit down next to them and tell them? I don't know. It's going to be different for every kid. And then how are they going to demonstrate their understanding? Not every kid's going to be able to do it in my online exam. Some kids are going to design a video game, and I have kids doing that. Some kids are going to write out in prose by hand every single thing that they know about these objectives that I have. Some kids are going to demonstrate this in a project. They're going to start on the project with the end in mind, and they're going to tap down into my learning objectives and pull those into their project as they're developing their project. These are ways that I'm trying to meet the needs of my kids, trying to individualize their education, and it's very different from where I was at in 2008 when we were kind of doing this fill the gaps, don't let them move on, mastery approach. I'll shut up.
What's the buzzword for UDL flipped?
There isn't. I call it flipped UDL in my presentation. So
okay.
Yeah, when I present about it, I was like flipped classroom, and then I discovered UDL. So I don't care what the term is. I want my kids to learn, and I want them to do so in a way that's meaningful to them.
You know,
go ahead, John.
I was at I had the privilege of going to Harvard last week. I was speaking at Harvard, and there was a group of the OER, Open Educational Resources Group. Yeah. And the keynote speaker was Joy Ito. I don't know if you know Joy Ito, but he is in charge of the MIT Media Lab, I think I want to say it was called. Right. Fascinating story. But he was, again, Aaron, talking about pulling and how you need to pull information. And when the earthquake happened, or the tsunami and earthquake happened in Japan, he is of Japanese descent. And how he took a team over and they kind of crowdsourced the Geiger counters, and how he didn't know anything about Geiger counters, but he pulled all this information and he did what no government could do, and he got monitoring stations set up all over Japan on radiation Geiger counters. And they were pulling the information, and he was talking about how education should pull information into it when you need it. They had a problem. They had some radiation issues, right? And they were pulling that information.
To be devil's advocate here a little bit, I mean, obviously I think you'd be out of your mind to walk into my classroom or your classroom and say, hey, Mr. Sanders, you're no longer going to be teaching directly. We're going to use Khan Academy to do history, and you're going to support that and be Sal's guide on the side. Well, yes, I definitely agree, but there's also, like, what about those schools that have teachers that are absolutely not meeting their students' needs? Just abysmal teachers sitting there collecting paychecks, and its graduation rates are, sub 50%. Would you recommend something like this, or do you see something like the Khan Academy meeting those basic needs for those teachers that are basically not present? I mean, that's something that I get pushed back a lot when I share the arguments that you guys are making here.
I think I would say, I mean, Aaron and I have had a lot of opportunities to go all over and see teachers, and I just feel like that percentage of teachers is such a small percentage. I guess I really believe in teachers. I believe in teachers who And the vast majority of teachers are great teachers. Are there some bad teachers out there? Sure there are. But I think most of them want to do what's right for their kids. I don't know. I'm not sure that percentage is high enough that I need to worry about. The teachers who aren't sort of doing their job, I got to trust that administration is going to figure out a way to do that. Does that always happen? Of course not. But
yeah, I mean, I would say, first off, try to intervene and provide the support that those teachers need to become better teachers. I mean, help support them, give them the training that they need, get them back on track before you would say you're no longer in charge of your classroom, we're going to use this other thing. I mean, you were talking about, okay, Mr. Sanders, you're no longer going to teach history, you're going to be Sal's guide on the side because we're going to use that curriculum. Frankly, that's the same as saying, here is the curriculum package we purchased from X publisher, here's the textbook, here are the PowerPoint slides that go along with it, here's the packet of worksheets, and here's all the labs, and oh, by the way, here's the assessment test bank. Go. And you can only use these resources. It's the exact same thing, only his is free. That's the only difference.
I've spoken to teachers who are they love these con videos. They're like, this is great. I just have the kids watch the videos at home. They they come to school the next day, and even though I may have worked with them to get them to produce their own videos. Once they realize that Sal Khan is out there, they're like, oh, well, I don't have to do them. They're already there.
I have an idea on how to make that work. I've shared this with some people. But anyways, I still think you need that personal touch. And there's some times where you don't have the expertise. And so, for example, when I first started teaching Earth and Space, and I'm no geologist, I had some geology stuff. And there was a married couple who came to one of our conferences and was using the exact same textbook. And they were making the videos. And they were doing what I was doing first semester, second semester. What they were doing second semester, I was doing first semester. So it really worked out second semester. I pulled from them and said, hey, can I bring you in my videos? But I would come on, I would do a little video and I'd say, hey, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, and now you can listen to them. And the kids would be taught by these other teachers. But I would pull them in. But I'd kind of clip, I would be a part of it. And so I can envision a website where I can say, hey, I'm going to turn this over now to Sal Khan or whoever, right, so that they can do this piece that either I don't have time to do. I wouldn't necessarily say that in the video, or I don't have the expertise to do.
Right.
All right. Well, hey, we're gonna dive back in. We're gonna let it run a little bit this time because
we talk too much.
It's okay. You guys have a lot of awesome things to say. So let's do it.
Encourage you to experiment. We encourage you to failure, but we do expect mastery. This is just another one of the modules. This is trigonometry. This is shifting and reflecting functions. And they all fit together. We have about 90 of these right now. And you could go to the site right now. It's all free, not trying to sell anything. But the general idea is that they all fit into this knowledge map. That top node right there, that's literally single-digit addition. It's like 1 + 1 is equal to 2. And the paradigm is once you get 10 in a row on that, then it keeps forwarding you to more and more advanced modules. So if you keep this further down the knowledge map, we're getting into more advanced arithmetic. Further down, you start getting into pre-algebra and early algebra. Further down, you start getting into algebra 1, algebra 2, a little bit of pre-calculus. And the idea is from this, we can actually teach everything. Well, everything that can be taught in this type of a framework. So you can imagine, and this is what we are working on, is from this knowledge map, you have logic, you have computer programming, you have grammar, you have genetics, all based off of that core of, okay, if you know this and that, now you're ready for this next concept. Now, that can work well for an individual learner, and I encourage one for you to do it with your kids, but I also encourage everyone in the audience to do it yourself. It'll change what happens at the dinner table. But what we want to do is use the natural conclusion of the flipping of the classroom that those early teachers had emailed me about. And so what I'm showing you here, this is actually data from a pilot in the Los Altos School District where they took 2 5th-grade classes and 2 7th-grade classes and completely gutted.
Did you guys secretly email him?
Kids aren't using textbooks. We're not getting one-size-fits-all lectures. They're doing Khan Academy. They're doing that software for roughly half of their math class. And I want to make it clear, we don't view this as the complete math education. What it does is, and this is what's happening in Los Altos, it frees up time. This is the blocking and tackling, making sure you know how to do the system of equations, and it frees up time for the simulations, for the games, for the mechanics, for the robot building, for the estimating how high that hill is.
He called it games.
On its shadow. And so the paradigm is the teacher walks in every day, Every kid works at their own pace, and a teacher gets...
The system isn't bad. I mean, if it's the whole mastery system.
You look at this dashboard.
I love the green and the red and all that kind of stuff, and that would be a very powerful tool in the hands of a teacher who's trying to teach to every specific community.
Red means they're stuck. And what the teacher does is literally just says, let me intervene on the red kids. Or even better.
When I watched this the first time, you know, a year ago or whatever, I looked at this and I did like this assessment piece, at least from the mastery perspective.
I like the idea of having data, but my fear about this whole process was that the teacher would become this dummy in the corner of the room, not the mentor that he speaks of.
So our paradigm is to really arm the teachers with as much data as possible, really data that...
I wonder if this is also just that whole
finance or marketing or manufacturing.
Testing mentality that we're seeing in American schools that's probably, I mean, at least in my opinion, it was misguided that we've got to test our kids to death. And if you're doing that in the class, that causes problems, I think. You know, I don't know. I see a value for standards and all that kind of stuff, so I'm not totally against it. But this is just feeding into that.
Well, one thing that's going to happen really soon is they're expanding the pilots, and there's several pilot schools in California, and we're going to get some data on how effective the Khan Academy is. And knowing some of these classrooms where the pilot is going on, I have to speak carefully here. It's being used differently in every single classroom. It's a tool, and it's a power tool. And these are some incredibly powerful data here. And when leveraged correctly, you can have a huge impact in the classroom. But every single teacher is using it differently. And how can you say, look, it works, or no, it doesn't, because it was way different everywhere. So.
Yeah. And what about the kid who doesn't learn from the video and needs some other medium? What about the kid who is not able to demonstrate their understanding on the Khan Academy assessment? That's what I was running into when I was doing the flipped mastery approach. I had kids who weren't learning from my video, and they weren't able to express their understanding on my exam, and I wanted to be able to make sure that they were learning and were showing me that they could learn, and I wanted to accommodate them. I don't see this as being very accommodating for kids who don't fit into the mold. I'll shut up now so we can listen to him.
It's all right.
Now, as valuable as something like this is in a district like Los Altos, our goal is to use technology to humanize, not just in Los Altos, but kind of on a global scale, what's happening in education. And actually, that kind of brings an interesting point, is that, you know, a lot of the effort in humanizing the classroom is focused on student-to-teacher ratios. In our mind, the relevant metric is student to valuable human time with the teacher ratio. So in a traditional model, most of the teacher's time is spent doing lectures and grading tests and whatnot. Maybe 5% of their time is actually sitting next to students and actually working with them. Now 100% of their time is. So once again, using technology...
Okay. This is stuff we were saying 3 years prior to this talk. Nothing new.
You know, as he talks a lot about, this is going to empower teachers. It just makes me worried that we haven't pushed teachers there yet, I don't think, to be the project-based, higher order type of teachers that I think we desire and that we want. And I worry that this approach, at least this with his app, is going to give in to that urge of teachers that really want that pre-wrapped curriculum, and for them to kind of sit back and go, oh, well, they're learning that and they're passing their tests. I'm going to kind of sit idly by here and not worry about that, that big project I wanted to do.
Go ahead, John.
One thing I think is that the flipped class, Aaron and I have said this a number of times, it's a stepping stone for that teacher who's lectured for many years to switch over to a more of a project base. I think it really lends itself to getting there. Maybe that's only when they make their own videos where there's more ownership in the content. I don't know. That's why I still think it's valuable to teach the teachers how to make the videos.
I'll save my point for later. The video's rolling, so.
No, that's all right.
During the day, and that's the reason why he or she can't go to school. Now they can spend 2 hours a day and remediate or get up to speed and not feel embarrassed about what they do or don't know. Now imagine what happens where, we talked about the peers teaching each other inside of a classroom, but this is all one system. There's no reason why you can't have that peer-to-peer tutoring beyond that one classroom. Imagine what happens if that student in Calcutta all of a sudden can tutor your son, or your son can tutor that kid in Calcutta. And I think what you'll see emerging is this notion of a global one-world classroom. And that's essentially what we're trying to build. Thank you.
I guess that was the whole talk.
Well, Bill Gates comes out now, and we don't have to watch the Bill Gates point because he just pats him on the back and everything, and hands him his wallet.
Yeah.
Well then, pause it for a second then.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to hear Bill Gates?
I just want you to pause it for a second.
Let's pause there and see if we have time.
We're good.
Couple of things, and I think I got to remember the last point. I think we are. If you want to do a search on YouTube for Education 2060 by Salman, I really like that, his views on where education is going. It kind of aligns with some of the stuff you mentioned. There, it brings up that school in Sweden that's eliminated classroom walls entirely, and I like that. I do think we're moving towards a global classroom, but I think it needs to be teacher-driven.
Absolutely.
I have set up experiences for my students where they're collaborating with students in Prague, and we're working on a project together, and it's me and the teacher in Prague driving that, meeting on the weekends via video chat.
I'm doing the same thing. My kids are working on a project with some chemistry students in Toronto right now, and it's the same thing. That teacher and me, we decided what can we do collaboratively together, and now the kids are doing their own, analysis in their individual labs, sharing their data in a Google Doc, and writing a report. And
I think Sal would agree with us here, and I just think. The biggest thing that I have an issue of is even how Bill Gates is interpreting, and you'll hear it in a second, what Salman is doing. I think of it, the Khan Academy, as one really, really good tool that, is there for certain situations, and I might even turn to it in certain times, but it's one tool. I might turn to Socrative. I might turn to other YouTube EDU partners and leverage their videos in the classroom, but those are tools. They're not answers. So, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. This is a tool in the toolbox of educators. It's not the answer to solve all the woes. And I've sort of kind of made it systemic in my classroom where this is kind of the way I do business, but frankly, I've backed off a lot from the system, and I've made the videos a resource that the kids can tap and access when they need it, when they want it. It is not required. I do not require students to watch my videos. They're there as a resource. If they want to read a textbook, great. If they want to Google the learning objective, great. If they want to start with their project and tap down and consult with me and say, hey, I want to do this, how can I make sure I get the appropriate chemistry stuff in there? I'll work with them and figure out what their project is going to look like. Like, I have a kid, he loves to weld, and he wants to do a metallurgy project for chemistry. So in lieu of my quantitative analysis of a household project that I have my kids do at the end of the year, he's going to do a metallurgy project. And he's going to make it work, and I'm working with him to do that. And you can't do that when you have a big system that you have to jump through the appropriate hoops in order to move on to the next step. It just doesn't. The two are not the same. They're not compatible.
Now, I don't want to. I want to always give you guys credit for the idea. You could go back 100 years and say somebody recorded a record and you learned it from it or something. But the tipping point, I think, is really what Salman Khan is really about, right? And the fact that I have teachers now telling me and talking to me about what the flipped classroom is, and did you hear Salman Khan, and they're using his name, do we owe him at least a little bit for bringing it to a public stage?
Absolutely.
For sure.
Trust me, once his video came out, the number of emails I started to get quadrupled overnight, just because I own flipclass.com. People just kind of, thingy, let's do a Google search. Hey, this guy has an email address. Let's send him something. So absolutely. I mean, he launched the term into the public light. I mean, he's been on 60 Minutes, and then people start searching flipped classroom, and they start finding me, and they find John, and they find all of our other colleagues across the country who are doing this, and people that we've worked with, and people who have said, hey, great idea, I'm doing it too. Let's collaborate. Let's share our ideas. Let's learn from each other's mistakes, and let's just help kids and help teachers be better.
And that's where I think that the Khan Academy kind of lost grasp of their own story, and the story got ahead of them. And I don't think that. I mean, I think that they would agree with a lot of the things that we're saying here. And I think it's people like big foundations that want big results, and being able to say that we are funding the math classroom of the world. And there's probably a lot of pressure there, because when I've seen other talks that Salman has done, I've heard him on other programs and stuff, he agrees with us on most of these issues. It's just where it's going, and people are looking for silver bullets, and this is not one of them. And there isn't one. It's good teachers create good students. I mean,
Good point.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the one thing that I've noticed that just talking to educators, you know, they mention Sal Khan and they hear Sal Khan, and most people will say, yeah, you know, great resources, glad he's done what he's done. He's not a teacher. Why is he such a big deal in education? And a lot of teachers that I've talked to are pretty resentful at the fact that someone who is not a teacher, who is not a professional educator like the rest of us are, got launched into the limelight of being an education reformer. Now, that's not to say you have to have a degree in something to be good at something, but there is some resentment out there. I mean, I encounter it a lot from teachers. They're like, grumble, 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 he's not a teacher. He's a hedge fund analyst, whatever that is. So I don't know what that is.
I've said that many times on past programs and stuff too. I want to see him. I want to see him invite the teachers. Basically, I want to start seeing him collaborate more with teachers, and because I always believe that teachers could make videos that are 10 times better than his.
Yeah, you know, to be honest, John and I reached out to him, and we tried to contact him right after this came out and got no response. So we tried.
Well, John, you actually had a video that came out a couple days ago. Why don't you talk about that real quick?
Well, speaking of TED, a while back, about
your
last
turn,
fall,
man.
Aaron and I got invited to have a conversation with the people at TED because they're launching something called TED Ed, and we spent some time chatting with them. Sort of a big thing, their new TED Ed website is coming out in a couple of weeks. I can't tell you too much on it because we signed non-disclosure agreements. But one of the things they're doing, you know, TED is ideas worth sharing. TED Ed is lessons worth sharing. They are going to take, they're trying to find great teachers, and so for whatever reason they decided I'm a great teacher. Great teachers, and they want to amplify their voice, and they made, I made an audio file sitting in my house right here in Illinois. I submitted it to them, and then they animated it, and it was really amazing what they did. And
So
you can
good.
find it.
I already know that everything is made up.
There you are, animated John Bergman.
You might even know that each atom is made
Animated John Bergman, yeah.
up of an electron.
So it was pretty cool.
Atoms are
Really cool. Did I just lose you guys?
Yeah,
No.
you're still there. Yeah, they're really
Oh,
cool.
you're good. Keep
I
talking.
got one in the hopper. I'm kind of excited to see what it looks like.
So
I'm excited.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, there's the animated John Bergman. Another thing I want to talk about real fast is, I don't know if you've even seen this, Dan, but speaking of somebody looking for foundation support, Aaron and I, we want to give this away, the professional development of teachers, because we are teachers and we believe in teachers. So
Sure.
we just launched the Flipped Learning Network, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to primarily two main purposes, professional development of teachers in helping them flip their classrooms, whatever that means to them, and also the research involved in that. So if you go to, the Flipped Learning Network, it's flippedlearning.org.
Got it.
We don't have any money yet. We've got some people who said they'd be willing to give us some money to sponsor this, and we've got a conference this summer, etc. So we would, it's pretty cool. Go to flippedlearning.org, and you can learn all about it. Who's involved?
This looks really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of version 0.5 of the website. We just threw it out there just to have something out there while we get it going. So this will start to look a lot different over the coming weeks and months.
And you have Ramsey involved, which is
We do, yeah.
which is great.
Yeah, Ramsey Musallam is a great guy, great friend. If you haven't seen him on the Infinite Thinking Machine that's being put out by Q, you should.
Oh, yeah.
He is hilarious. I want to know how many times it took him to not drop the phones that they were throwing at him last week. But anyhow, yeah, Ramsey's a great guy. So yeah, Ramsey's one of our founding board members as well, and we hope to get this off the ground here very, very soon. So yeah, like John said, we're focusing on teacher training, professional development, also using the flipped model for professional development. So I guess kind of a meta flip, if you want to call it that. And then also, like John said, research and just getting the word out. We also want to amplify the voices of teachers. We have people in the hopper to do a kind of a flipped classroom podcast every week to highlight what amazing teachers across the country are doing, and just to say, hey, teachers are awesome. Here's what awesome teachers are doing.
Awesome. This is great, guys. Well, hey, thanks. Hey, James, do you have something to promo too? I don't want to forget about you.
Couple things coming up. No, sure. People would be mad at me if I didn't. I'm going to be speaking at the Google Apps for EDU Summit in Santa Clara, July 12th and 13th. On YouTube in the Classroom, and I'm doing a couple sessions for the Google Education On-Air Conference coming up on May 2nd, doing one on harnessing the full power of the web, and then another one on YouTube, and I think that's the only stuff that we can talk about right now. So yeah, check those out. Feel free to reach out for links and whatnot, and I'd love to get you guys more info.
And of course, youtube.com/education, youtube.com/schools, a lot of good stuff at both of those links.
Yeah.
And just to kind of...
YouTube for Teachers is definitely the place you should start. Spent a lot of time creating that, and it's a great resource, and we're trying to make it even better.
Really good stuff. Yeah, you know, one other thing I think I should probably plug is if you go to John's blog, it's flipped-learning.org, and I think there's .com, sorry, and I think there's a link on flippedlearning.org. What we're trying to do is we're trying to kind of curate some really good content so teachers can see what other teachers are making in terms of videos. So I think we've got over 1,000 videos now. There are videos, there are other teachers' videos, science teachers, English teachers, social studies teachers, math teachers. We're trying to showcase some awesome work that teachers are doing. So they could use them in their classroom as instructional videos if they want. Teachers can use them as resources. Some of the feedback we've gotten of our videos are like first-year teachers saying, thank you for your video. I now know how I can teach that to my students. So they're not using the video to teach their students, but they're using the video to learn how to teach their students. And we're trying to showcase some awesome video that teachers are using out there. So yeah, if you click the video tab up at the top, it'll take you to that portal.
All right.
So,
well, of course, you guys have the Flip Conference coming in June, which I will probably be there.
Awesome. Yeah, that's in Chicago this year. Should be a good time.
Right. All right. Well, hey, thanks again, John Bergman, Aaron Sams, James Sanders. Great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks,
Great chatting, James.
Let me take it out, as they say. Just a couple things. Remember to check out Wilderness Classroom Field Report. Episode 3 will be coming out on Monday, and we'll post the show tomorrow. But Wilderness Classroom Field Report is our newest podcast on the EdReach network, and that comes Mondays at 7 a.m. We can find you guys on Twitter, of course, right? Bergman?
Yep.
Where can we find you?
I'm John Bergman, and John, Jon, and then Bergman with an N, 2 N's at the end.
And I'm Chemical Sam's on Twitter.
Chemical Sams. And
James T. Sanders.
James T. Sanders. And, of course, you can follow myself at drezac, D-R-E-Z-A-C, and, of course, EdReach Us on Twitter as well, or like our Facebook page. All great ways to get the latest blog posts, podcast, and news coming out of EdReach. Thanks again for joining us, guys. Continue the conversation at edreach.us, and we will see you next week. You're watching the EdReach Network. And we're done. Hey, thanks, guys. That was great.
That was great.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Hard to not keep talking, but actually I like the end there where we just kind of talked over him.
Yeah, it worked. He was just talking about data anyhow. So.
Right, exactly. I thought that was pretty effective, actually.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks, James. This will post probably tomorrow around 3, 4 o'clock.
Awesome.
And I haven't checked to see if we had any live viewers, because
we definitely did. I had a few talking to me in the chat. We know it is still live, but yes, we did.
Right.
We know, Jim, still that it's still live. Don't worry. Thank you, though.
All right, guys. Have a good night.
All right, thanks.